The Liberty had become a hive of controlled madness. In every corridor, crew members crawled through maintenance shafts with tools and spare parts. The sounds of cutting torches, grinding metal, and shouted instructions echoed through the ship. What had once been an orderly military vessel now looked like the inside of a giant machine being rebuilt while it was still running. Chief Engineer Lisa Park had divided the crew into 3 main teams, each with a specific mission that would determine whether they lived or died. She moved between them like a conductor directing an orchestra, coordinating their efforts and solving problems as they arose. Team Alpha was led by Lieutenant Kevin Ross, a young officer who had never commanded anything more complex than a maintenance shift. Now he was responsible for dismantling half the ship. His people worked in the destroyed sections, carefully removing every piece of equipment that could still be used. They stripped wiring from damaged walls, pulled computer cores from crushed compartments, and salvaged metal plating that could be reshaped into new components. Ross had quickly learned that salvage work was like solving a 3-dimensional puzzle, where every piece had to be perfect. A power relay that looked undamaged from the outside might have microscopic cracks that would cause it to fail under stress. A length of fiber optic cable might test good, but have weak spots that would break during installation. His team had to be both fast and careful, which seemed impossible until they developed their own rhythm. "Kevin, we found something interesting in Section 12, called out Petty Officer Maria Santos from inside a damaged compartment. She emerged holding a device that looked like it had been partially melted and then frozen solid. Ross examined the device with his scanner. According to the readings, it was completely dead, but Santos had a reputation for finding value in things others would throw away. "What makes you think we can use this?" "The quantum processor core is intact," Santos explained, pointing to the center of the device. "If we can extract it and clean off the damaged outer casing, we might be able to integrate it into the new navigation system." This was exactly the kind of creative thinking that was making their impossible plan actually work. Instead of following strict replacement protocols, the crew was learning to see every damaged component as a source of raw materials for something completely different. Team Beta was working on the power systems under the leadership of Santos, who had been promoted to team leader after showing unusual skill at improvising electrical solutions. Her job was to take the ship's scattered and damaged power grid and rebuild it into something that could actually keep them alive. The original Liberty had used a standard military power distribution system with multiple redundant pathways. It was safe, reliable, and completely destroyed. Santos and her team were building something that had never existed before, a power network that adapted itself to changing conditions. "Maria, the quantum drive team needs another 40% power capacity." Park's voice came through the comm system. Santos looked at her power distribution board, which was really just a collection of tablets and hand-drawn diagrams taped to a wall. "We do not have 40% more power to give them." "Then make some," Park replied, and the comm channel closed. Santos stared at the wall for a moment, then smiled. She had an idea that was either brilliant or suicidal, possibly both. "Jenkins, Rodriguez, come here. We are going to do something that will either solve our power problem or blow up the ship." The most critical work was being done by Team Gamma, led by Park herself. Their job was to rebuild the quantum drive core, the device that would allow the Liberty to travel faster than light. Without it, they would be trapped in this system forever, slowly dying as their supplies ran out. The original quantum drive had been a masterpiece of engineering, a device that cost more than some small planets. It was also completely destroyed, reduced to expensive scrap metal by the asteroid impact. Park and her team were building a replacement using spare parts, personal electronics, and pure determination. Dr. Neil Carter worked alongside the engineering team, his physicists' understanding of quantum mechanics proving invaluable as they tried to make incompatible systems work together. The new drive would not be as powerful or efficient as the original, but it only needed to work long enough to get them home. "Neil, what happens if we route the quantum field through the gravity generator instead of using a dedicated containment system?" Park asked, holding up a component that had originally been part of the ship's artificial gravity system. Carter considered this for a moment. Theoretically, it should work. The gravity generator already manipulates space-time on a local level. If we can modify its field parameters, we might be able to create the quantum bubble we need for faster-than-light travel. And the risks? Park prompted. If we get the calculations wrong, the ship could be turned inside out at the quantum level. Or we could create a small black hole, or the drive could explode and take half the system with it. Park nodded as if he had told her the weather forecast. So pretty much the same risks as any other part of this plan. Let's do it. Throughout the ship, similar scenes were playing out. The medical bay had been converted into a component testing facility, with doctors using surgical instruments to perform delicate repairs on computer chips. The recreation room had become a metalworking shop, with crew members using exercise equipment to bend and shape hull plating. Lieutenant Commander Rachel Stone had set up her logistics command center in what used to be the ship's library. She had tablets and displays covering every available surface, tracking the movement of every person and component throughout the Liberty. Her job was to make sure that the right materials reached the right teams at exactly the right moment. Stone. To all teams, she announced over the ship's communication system. Team Alpha, the quantum drive team needs those processor cores from Section 12 in 30 minutes. Team Beta, the navigation team is ready for the modified power couplings. Team Gamma, your replacement field generators are ready for pickup. In Storage Bay 7, the coordination required was staggering. Every action had to be timed perfectly because the teams were so interdependent that a delay in one area would cascade through the entire operation. Stone had created a schedule that looked more like a military battle plan than a repair procedure. On the Zephyrian ships, Admiral Kethvar watched the human activity with growing bewilderment. His own engineering teams were analyzing every human action, trying to understand their methodology. "Admiral," reported Sub-Engineer Veltar, "their approach is completely illogical. They are working on 17 different systems simultaneously without completing any single repair sequence. They are also using components in ways that violate basic engineering principles." Kethvar studied the sensor readings that showed the inside of the human vessel. The Liberty looked like it was being taken apart and rebuilt at the same time. Humans were crawling through spaces that seemed too small for them, welding in zero gravity, and performing complex calculations on devices that looked primitive compared to Zephyrian technology. And yet, Kethvar observed, their efficiency is remarkable. Look at their coordination. Each individual seems to understand not only their own task, but how it fits into the larger plan. "Should we offer assistance?" asked another Zephyrian engineer. "No," Kethvar replied. "We are witnessing something unprecedented. The humans are not simply repairing their vessel. They are demonstrating a completely different approach to engineering. We must observe and learn." Back on the Liberty, the breakthrough came when Dr. Carter realized they could use the ship's artificial gravity generator as a secondary power source for the quantum drive. It was an approach so unconventional that no engineering manual in the galaxy had ever considered it. "Lisa," Carter called out over the comm system, "if we reverse the polarity on the gravity generator and feed its output through the modified navigation array, we can create a resonance cascade that should provide enough power to initialize the quantum field." Park paused in her work, considering the implications. The idea was so far outside normal engineering practices that it might actually work. "Neil, that is either brilliant or completely insane." "Why can't it be both?" Carter replied, and Park could hear the grin in his voice. As the work continued, something remarkable was happening. The crew was not just rebuilding their ship, they were becoming something more than they had been before. The crisis had forced them to work together in ways they never had, sharing knowledge and skills across all departments. The botanist was helping with power distribution. The cook was assisting with hull repairs. The communications officer was rewiring quantum field generators. The Liberty was being transformed, and so were the people who called her home. Hour 17 arrived with the sound of emergency alarms echoing through the Liberty's corridors. Captain Jake Morrison ran through the ship toward engineering, his heart pounding with fear that their impossible plan was about to fail when they were so close to success. He found Chief Engineer Lisa Park standing in front of a control panel that was sparking and smoking. Her face was covered in soot, and her hands were shaking slightly from exhaustion and stress. Around her, the engineering section looked like a battlefield where the war had been fought with tools and determination. "Report," Morrison said, trying to keep his voice calm. "Power surge in the main grid," Park replied, her voice hoarse from shouting instructions over the noise of construction. "The quantum drive initialization drew more power than we calculated. We overloaded 3 major circuits and nearly fried the whole system." Morrison looked at the displays around them. Red warning lights covered almost every screen, but underneath the chaos, he could see that systems were still running. The ship was still alive. "Can we fix it?" "Already working on it," Park said, pointing to where Dr. Neil Carter and Petty Officer Maria Santos were rewiring a junction box while sparks flew around them. "But Jake, we are pushing these systems beyond their design limits. Every component is operating in ways it was never meant to. We are one major failure away from losing everything." Through the ship's communication system, Lieutenant Commander Rachel Stone's voice provided a constant stream of updates and coordination. "Team Alpha, we need those backup power couplings from Section 9 immediately. Team Beta, the navigation array is ready for final calibration. All teams, we have less than 1 hour remaining." Morrison walked through the engineering section, observing the controlled chaos around him. His crew had been working for 17 straight hours, and it showed. They moved with the mechanical efficiency of people who were running on determination alone. Their uniforms were torn and dirty, their faces streaked with grease and sweat, but their eyes still held focus. Lieutenant Kevin Ross appeared from a maintenance shaft, carrying a device that looked like it had been assembled from spare parts and held together with hope. "Captain, we found this in the damaged sensor array. Dr. Carter thinks he can use it to stabilize the quantum field fluctuations." Morrison examined the device, though he had no idea what he was looking at. It was clearly human technology, but modified in ways that made it almost unrecognizable. Wires and components had been added in configurations that seemed random, but were clearly carefully planned. "Will it work?" Morrison asked. Ross grinned, though the expression was tired. "Sir, at this point I have stopped asking if things will work and started asking if they will work long enough." That seemed to sum up their entire situation. They were not building the Liberty to last forever. They were building her to survive one jump to the nearest Federation station, where proper repairs could be made. Everything they were doing was temporary, improvised, and held together by skill and luck. Dr. Carter emerged from the quantum drive chamber, his physicist's coat replaced by a standard engineering jumpsuit that was several sizes too large for him. He had become an unofficial member of the engineering team, his theoretical knowledge proving invaluable in making their impossible modifications actually function. "Lisa, we have a problem with the quantum field alignment," he said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "The field generators we salvaged from the damaged sections are not identical. They create slightly different field patterns, which means the quantum bubble will not be stable." Park closed her eyes and took a deep breath. After 17 hours, of solving one crisis after another, this felt like the problem that might finally break them. "How different are the patterns?" "About 12% variance in the field harmonics," Carter replied. "In a normal installation, that would be completely unacceptable. The drive would tear itself apart within minutes of activation." "But this is not a normal installation," Park said thoughtfully. "What if we do not try to make the fields identical? What if we use the variance as a feature instead of fighting it?" Carter looked at her with confusion. "I do not understand." "Dynamic field adjustment," Park explained, her engineering mind working through the possibilities. "Instead of creating a single stable quantum bubble, we create multiple overlapping bubbles that compensate for each other's instabilities. The field variance becomes a form of redundancy." Carter was quiet for a moment as he considered this approach. "That is either brilliant or completely insane." "Why can't it be both?" Park replied, echoing his own words from earlier. Throughout the ship, similar conversations were taking place as the crew encountered problems that had never been faced before, and solved them with solutions that had never been tried. The medical bay team had figured out how to use surgical lasers to perform precision welding on quantum components. The navigation team had learned to calibrate their instruments using the ship's food processors as reference points. Commander Alex Turner worked at his rebuilt tactical station, which now looked like it had been assembled from components taken from every other system on the ship. His job was to monitor the Zephyrian vessels and ensure they maintained their respectful distance, but he found himself fascinated by what his own people were accomplishing. "Captain," Turner called out, "the Zephyrians are increasing their sensor activity. I think they are trying to understand our modifications." Morrison joined him at the tactical station. The three alien vessels maintained their positions at the edge of the system, but their sensor beams were focused intently on the Liberty. "Let them look," Morrison said. "Maybe they will learn something." As Hour 18 approached, the pace of work intensified even further. Every team was racing against time to complete their critical tasks. The ship had been transformed into something that looked more like a prototype than a finished vessel, but all the important systems were finally coming online. "All teams, this is Park," came the chief engineer's voice over the communication system. "Prepare for final systems integration. This is the moment of truth." The quantum drive chamber had become the focal point of their efforts. The rebuilt drive core looked nothing like the original. Where the factory-installed system had been sleek and uniform, their improvised replacement was a maze of cables, modified components, and creative solutions. It should not have worked according to any engineering textbook ever written. "Field generators online," Carter reported from his position at the quantum physics station. "Power coupling stable. Field variance within acceptable parameters." "Navigation array calibrated and ready," called out Lieutenant Stone from the bridge. "Course plotted for Federation Station Alpha 7. "Life support holding steady," reported the medical team. All personnel accounted for and ready for quantum transition. Morrison took his position at the captain's chair, which had been rebuilt using parts from the ship's gymnasium equipment. Around him, the bridge looked like it had been assembled by people who had never seen a proper starship bridge, but had a general idea of what one should contain. "Admiral Kethvar is requesting communication," Turner announced. "Put him through," Morrison replied. The Zephyrian's holographic form materialized on the bridge, but something was different about his appearance. Where before he had seemed confident and slightly condescending, now he appeared genuinely curious and perhaps even impressed. "Captain Morrison," Kethvar said, "our sensors indicate that you have somehow restored your vessel to operational status. This achievement is beyond our calculations." Morrison could not help but smile. "Admiral, I appreciate your concern, but, as you can see, reports of our ship's death were greatly exaggerated." "Captain," Kethvar continued, "our engineers would like to request permission to examine your modifications after you have completed your journey. Your approach to multi-system integration challenges several fundamental principles of our engineering philosophy." "I am afraid the specific details are classified," Morrison replied diplomatically. "But we would be happy to discuss general principles of human engineering with your people at some future time." Park's voice came through the communication system one final time. "All stations, quantum drive is ready for activation. Estimated time to jump capability 30 seconds. Morrison looked around at his crew. They had worked for 18 hours straight, pushing themselves and their ship beyond all reasonable limits. They had taken a vessel that the galaxy's most advanced engineers had declared beyond repair and made her ready to fly again. "All hands," Morrison announced. "Prepare for quantum jump." The damaged conference room looked like a disaster zone. Emergency lights cast strange shadows on the walls, and the air recycling system made odd noises. Captain Morrison sat at the broken table with his senior staff around him. Everyone looked tired and worried, but their eyes held determination. Chief Engineer Lisa Park activated her tablet and projected the Liberty's blueprint onto the cracked wall display. Red sections showed the damaged areas, which covered almost half the ship. The quantum drive core, their most important system, was completely destroyed. The main engines were twisted metal. The power grid was a mess of broken circuits and burned wiring. "The situation is bad," Park said, pointing at the display. "But it is not hopeless. The hull can be patched. The basic structure is still sound. The real problem is that we need to rebuild almost everything else from scratch. Commander Alex Turner leaned forward in his chair. What exactly are we working with? What resources do we have? Park touched her tablet, and the display changed to show their inventory. We have basic fabrication units in engineering, emergency repair materials stored throughout the ship, tools and spare parts from the maintenance bays, and whatever we can salvage from the damaged sections. How much time do we actually have? Asked Lieutenant Commander Rachel Stone, the ship's logistics officer. The Zephyrian said 72 hours, but what does that really mean for us? Life support is stable for now, Park replied. But we are running on backup power. If we push the systems too hard during repairs, we could drain the batteries faster. I would say we have maybe 60 hours of safe working time. Dr. Neil Carter, the ship's physicist, had been quiet until now. He was young for his position, but his mind worked differently than most people. While others saw problems, he saw puzzles to be solved in creative ways. What if we are thinking about this wrong? Carter said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at him. What if we do not try to fix everything? What if we focus on building a working ship instead of restoring the Liberty to her original design? Park raised an eyebrow. Explain that. Carter stood up and walked to the display. He pointed at different sections of the ship. Military vessels are built with backup systems for everything. We have redundant power supplies, duplicate computers, extra life support units. What if we strip out all the damaged primary systems and rebuild using only the backups? You are talking about a complete refit, Stone said, already running numbers on her tablet. We would essentially be building a new ship inside the old hull. Exactly, Carter said with excitement. We do not need the Liberty to be pretty or comfortable. We just need her to fly and keep us alive long enough to reach a proper repair facility. Morrison had been listening carefully. The idea was crazy, but it had possibilities. Lisa, is it technically possible? Park was quiet for a long time, her engineering mind working through the implications. She pulled up different sections of the ship's blueprints, tracing power lines and system connections with her finger. In theory, yes, she said finally. We would need to reroute everything: power, data, life support, propulsion. It would be like performing surgery while the patient is awake, and we would need everyone working together perfectly. Define everyone, Turner said. I mean everyone, Park replied. Every person on this ship would need to contribute. The medical staff, the science teams, even the kitchen crew. This is not a job for just the engineering department. Stone was still working on her tablet. If we divide the crew into specialized teams and work in shifts around the clock, we might be able to maintain continuous progress. But the coordination would be incredibly complex. Morrison looked around the table at his officers. What is the timeline if we go with this plan? Park closed her eyes and ran through the calculations in her head. She thought about every system that needed to be rebuilt, every connection that needed to be made, every component that needed to be salvaged and repurposed. If everything goes perfectly, she said slowly, if we can maintain constant work cycles, if everyone performs at their peak, and if we do not encounter any major surprises, I estimate 18 to 20 hours. The room fell completely silent. The only sounds were the humming of the emergency power systems and the distant groaning of the damaged hull. 20 hours to rebuild a starship using spare parts and determination. The Zephyrians, with all their advanced technology and thousands of years of experience, had estimated months for the same job. The aliens are watching us, Turner pointed out. Their sensors will record everything we do. They will see every technique we use, every modification we make. Morrison thought about this for a moment, then smiled. It was not a pleasant smile, but it was confident. Good. Let them watch. Let them see what humans can do when we refuse to give up. Dr. Carter was already sketching diagrams on his tablet. We would need to completely reorganize the ship's systems. Instead of having separate networks for power, data, and life support, we could integrate everything into a single adaptive grid. That goes against every safety protocol ever written, Park said, but she was studying his sketches with interest. If one system fails, it could cascade through everything else. But it would also make the ship incredibly efficient, Carter countered. And if we design it right, the redundancy would actually be better than the original configuration. Stone looked up from her calculations. The logistics would be insane. We would need perfect timing to get the right materials to the right teams at exactly the right moments. One delay could throw off the entire schedule. Then we do not allow any delays, Morrison said firmly. Rachel, I need you to create a master schedule. Every person, every task, every component. Lisa, start dividing the crew into teams. Neil, keep working on the integrated systems design, or CO. Activated her comm unit. All hands, this is the chief engineer. Report to your department heads immediately for special assignment briefing. All off-duty personnel are now on duty. This is not a drill. As the meeting broke up, Morrison pulled Park aside. Lisa, be honest with me. What are the real chances? This will work? Park looked at her captain for a long moment. Jake, what we are planning has never been attempted before. We are going to rebuild a faster-than-light capable starship using improvised methods and salvaged parts. By any reasonable engineering standard, it should be impossible. But, Morrison prompted, I have worked with this crew for 2 years. I know what they can do when they are motivated, and right now, they are very motivated. Park paused. I would say our chances are about 50-50, which is better odds than we had an hour ago. Morrison nodded. Then we better get started. Within minutes, the Liberty was buzzing with activity. Crew members who had never worked in engineering were getting crash courses in basic repair techniques. Scientists were learning to use welding torches. Kitchen staff were being taught to strip valuable components from damaged equipment. The transformation had begun, and the galaxy was watching. The UES Liberty floated dead in space, its hull torn open like a broken toy. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge, watching the damage reports flood his screen. Red lights flashed everywhere, and the ship groaned like a wounded animal. His crew moved around him with quiet efficiency, but he could see the worry in their eyes. Chief Engineer Lisa Park climbed up from the lower decks, her uniform torn and dirty. Oil stains covered her hands and her face was pale. She walked straight to the captain and handed him a tablet. The numbers on it made Morrison's stomach drop. Hull breach on decks 7 through 12, Park said, her voice steady despite everything. Primary engines are completely offline. Life support is running on backup power, and our quantum drive core has suffered critical damage. Morrison looked at the tablet again, hoping the numbers would change. They did not. The Liberty had been humanity's pride and joy when she launched. 6 months ago, she was sleek and fast with the best technology Earth could build. Now she looked like scrap metal floating in the darkness of space. The asteroid field had come from nowhere. Their sensors had not detected it until too late. The rocks were moving fast, pushed by some cosmic event they still did not understand. The Liberty had tried to dodge them, but there were too many. One massive chunk of rock had punched through their shields like they were made of paper. It tore through the ship from front to back, destroying everything in its path. Commander Alex, Turner looked up from his console. His tactical station was one of the few systems still working properly. Captain, we have company. Multiple ships approaching from the outer system. They are big. Morrison walked over to Turner's station and looked at the sensor display. 3 massive shapes were moving toward them, each one easily 10 times the size of the Liberty. The ships looked like they were made of crystal and light, bending the stars around them in impossible ways. Zephyrian signatures, Turner said, and they are scanning us. Morrison knew about the Zephyrians. Everyone in human space did. They were one of the oldest races in the galaxy, master builders who could construct space stations the size of moons. Their engineering skills were legendary. If the Zephyrians were here, it meant they had detected the Liberty's distress signal. The bridge fell silent as a holographic projection appeared in the center of the room. A tall figure materialized, its form shifting between solid and translucent. The being was twice as tall as any human, with elongated limbs and features that seemed carved from starlight. This was Admiral Kethavar, commander of the Zephyrian engineering fleet. Humans, the alien said, its voice carrying the weight of centuries. Your vessel has sustained what we calculate to be irreparable damage. We have analyzed your ship's condition from our sensors. The structural integrity has been compromised beyond standard repair protocols. Morrison stepped forward. He had dealt with aliens before, but never under circumstances like these. Admiral Kethvar, I am Captain Jake Morrison of the UES Liberty. We appreciate your concern for our situation. The Zephyrian's head tilted slightly, a gesture that might have been curiosity. Captain Morrison, our records indicate that your species has achieved faster-than-light travel only recently. Your technology, while admirable for its primitive nature, is insufficient for repairs of this magnitude. The word primitive hung in the air like a challenge. Morrison felt his crew tense around him, but he kept his voice calm. What are you suggesting, Admiral? We offer to transport your crew to the nearest Federation station, while we salvage what remains of your vessel for study. Your technology may provide insights into early spacefaring development patterns. Lisa Park stepped forward, her engineer's mind already working. How long would it take your people to repair a ship like this? Admiral Kethvar's expression remained neutral, but something that might have been amusement flickered in his eyes. With our current fleet and available resources, approximately 6 to 8 standard months. However, the energy expenditure would be enormous. The cost would far exceed the value of your vessel. Morrison felt anger building in his chest, but he forced it down. The Zephyrian was not trying to insult them. He was simply stating facts as he saw them. The alien had no way of knowing that the Liberty represented more than just a ship to humanity. She was their first real step into the larger galaxy, proof that humans belonged among the stars. We respectfully decline your offer, Admiral, Morrison said. We will handle the repairs ourselves. Now the Zephyrian did show emotion. A ripple passed through his holographic form, like water disturbed by a stone. Captain Morrison, I do not believe you understand the scope of the damage. Our engineers have been perfecting their craft for over 50,000 years. We have built structures that span entire star systems. This is not a matter of pride or determination. It is simple mathematics. Commander Turner looked at his captain with worry. The tactical officer had run his own calculations, and they were not encouraging. With their current resources and manpower, a proper repair would take months even if they had a full shipyard. Out here in empty space with only their basic tools, it seemed impossible. Furthermore, Admiral Kethvar continued, your life support systems are operating on backup power. Our sensors indicate you have perhaps 72 hours before complete system failure. Even if you possessed the technical knowledge to attempt repairs, you lack the time. Morrison looked around at his crew. He saw determination in their faces, but also fear. They were millions of miles from home, floating in a broken ship with limited time before the air ran out. The logical choice was to accept the Zephyrian offer and abandon the Liberty. But logic had never been humanity's strongest suit. Admiral, Morrison said, I appreciate your analysis and your generous offer. However, we are going to attempt repairs ourselves. If we fail, we will reconsider your assistance. The Zephyrian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried a note of what might have been respect. Very well, Captain Morrison. We will withdraw to a safe distance and monitor your progress. Perhaps we will learn something about human determination, even if we cannot learn anything about human engineering. The hologram faded, leaving the bridge in relative darkness. The crew looked at their captain, waiting for orders. Morrison turned to face them, seeing the mix of hope and doubt in their expressions. Lisa, he said to his chief engineer, gather your team. I want to know exactly what we are working with. Alex, monitor the Zephyrian ships, but do not consider them a threat. They are here to watch and learn. Park nodded. What about the deadline, Captain? 72 hours is not much time. Morrison smiled, though it was a grim expression. Then we better get started. The space around the Liberty began to shimmer as the quantum field built to full strength. The improvised drive core hummed with a sound that was entirely different from the original system. It was rougher, more powerful, and somehow more alive. than the factory-installed equipment had ever been. The ship itself seemed to vibrate with anticipation, as reality prepared to bend around them. "Field stability at 92% and holding," Dr. Neil Carter reported from his position at the quantum physics station. His voice carried a mixture of exhaustion and excitement. After 18 hours of impossible work, they were about to find out if their crazy plan would actually succeed. "Navigation ready," called out Lieutenant Commander Rachel Stone from the rebuilt bridge station. "Course locked on Federation Station Alpha 7. Distance, 47 light-years. Estimated travel time, 6 hours." Captain Jake Morrison looked around at his crew one final time before giving the order that would either save them all or destroy them. The bridge looked like it had been assembled by people who understood function better than form. Every surface was covered with exposed wiring, improvised control panels, and jury-rigged systems that somehow worked together, despite having no business doing so. "Engage quantum drive," Morrison commanded. The Liberty disappeared from normal space in a flash of twisted light that made the watching Zephyrian's sensors overload with impossible readings. For a moment, there was only empty space where the human vessel had been. Then, as the quantum field collapsed back to normal parameters, Admiral Kethvar realized he had just witnessed something that would change everything. "Sub-Engineer Veltar," Kethvar said to his second-in-command, "prepare a full report on everything we have observed. Include all sensor readings, timeline analyses, and theoretical models. The High Command must be informed immediately." "Admiral," Veltar replied, "our engineers are requesting permission to attempt similar modifications to one of our own vessels. They believe the human approach could improve our own quantum drive efficiency by significant margins." Kethvar considered this request carefully. The Zephyrians had been using the same basic quantum drive technology for over 10,000 years. It was stable, reliable, and thoroughly understood. What the humans had just accomplished was unstable, improvised, and completely unprecedented. It was also remarkable. "Grant permission for limited experimentation," Kethvar decided, "but use only unmanned test vessels until we better understand their methodology." 6 hours later, the Liberty emerged from quantum space near Federation Station Alpha 7 with all systems functioning normally. The station's traffic controllers nearly panicked when they detected the ship's approach, because according to their records, the Liberty should have been a floating wreck in the Kepler 442 system. "Federation Station Alpha 7. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the UES Liberty requesting priority docking clearance," Morrison transmitted. "We have sustained damage and require immediate repair facilities." "Liberty, this is Station Control," came the confused reply. "Our records show you as missing and presumed destroyed after your encounter with the Kepler asteroid field. Please confirm your identity and status." "Station Control identity confirmed. We suffered major damage but were able to effect emergency repairs sufficient for quantum travel. We are fully operational but require extensive refit before continuing our mission." What followed was controlled chaos as the Federation's best engineers swarmed over the Liberty to examine what the crew had accomplished. Word of the human ship's miraculous self-repair had already reached the station through Zephyrian communication networks, but seeing the actual modifications in person left even experienced engineers speechless. Chief Engineer Lisa Park found herself in the unusual position of giving technical briefings to representatives from a dozen different species, all eager to understand how humans had accomplished what their own best experts deemed impossible. "The key principle," Park explained to a gathering of alien engineers in the station's main conference hall, "was abandoning the concept of fixed system hierarchies. Instead of having dedicated primary and backup systems, we created an adaptive network where any component could serve multiple functions depending on current needs." Admiral Kethvar, who had traveled to the station specifically for this briefing, leaned forward with interest. "But how did you coordinate such complexity without predetermined specifications? Our analysis suggests you were modifying over 300 separate systems simultaneously." Dr. Carter stepped forward to field this question. "We used what we call distributed problem solving. Instead of having one central authority make all decisions, each team was empowered to develop creative solutions as long as their work interfaced properly with the other team's efforts. This approach would be considered highly irregular by galactic engineering standards, noted engineer Prime Zixtal of the Andromedan Collective, her mechanical voice carrying undertones of skepticism. Irregular, yes, Morrison agreed from his position at the head of the conference table. But undeniably effective. We rebuilt a faster-than-light capable starship in 18 hours, using improvised methods and salvaged materials. The briefing continued for hours, as alien engineers asked increasingly detailed questions about human methodology. They wanted to understand not just what had been done, but how the crew had managed to coordinate such a complex operation under extreme time pressure. The real surprise came when Federation engineers began analyzing the Liberty's performance data from her journey to the station. Chief Engineer Park made the discovery while reviewing the quantum drive's operational logs in her temporary quarters. "Jake, you need to see this," she called to Morrison over the ship's communication system. Morrison found Park in the engineering section staring at a display screen with an expression of amazement. "What is it, Lisa?" "The quantum drive efficiency ratings," Park said, pointing at the numbers on her screen. "Our improvised modifications did not just make the ship functional. They actually improved performance by 37% over the original specifications." Morrison looked at the data, hardly believing what he was seeing. "How is that possible?" "I think it is because we approached the problem differently," Park explained. "The original drive was designed to be safe and reliable above all else. Our version was designed to work with whatever components we had available. That forced us to find more efficient ways to achieve the same results. The implications were staggering. Not only had humanity proven they could survive in the galaxy's most challenging situations, they had accidentally discovered fundamental improvements to faster-than-light travel technology. Within days of the Liberty's arrival, the station became the center of unprecedented scientific exchange. Representatives from major galactic civilizations formally requested permission to study human engineering techniques. The Zephyrians proposed a joint research project to explore adaptive system design. The Andromedans offered to share their advanced materials in exchange for lessons in creative problem-solving. 3 months later, the first ship designed using hybrid human-alien engineering principles rolled out of the Federation shipyards. The vessel incorporated traditional alien precision and reliability, with human adaptability and creative integration. Its quantum drive was 30% more efficient than previous models, and its systems could reconfigure themselves automatically to handle damage or changing mission requirements. The design principles discovered during the Liberty's desperate, 18-hour repair had become the foundation for an entirely new generation of starships. Federation engineers were calling it the most significant advancement in spacecraft design in over a century. Admiral Kethvar, in his final report to the Zephyrian High Command, wrote words that would be studied by galactic historians for generations to come. "The humans do not merely solve problems, they fundamentally redefine the nature of the problems themselves. They have introduced concepts that challenge 50,000 years of engineering orthodoxy. We have much to learn from these newcomers to the galactic community." The Liberty, now fully repaired and upgraded with the best technology from a dozen worlds, departed Federation Station Alpha 7 6 months after her arrival. Her crew had been promoted and decorated, her engineering innovations had been copied throughout the galaxy, and her story had become legend. But perhaps most importantly, humanity had earned something that could not be manufactured or negotiated: the respect of the galactic community. They had proven that sometimes the best solutions come not from following established rules, but from having the courage and creativity to write entirely new ones. The age of humanity as a major galactic power had begun, not through conquest or superior technology, but through the simple human refusal to accept that something could not be done. In the vast darkness between the stars, that refusal had become a light that would guide them to a future none of them had dared to imagine.